Hey, what's up, guys? Mike Tron, and in this video, I'm going to share a really good story, okay, that I think will help with our awareness, okay, and help us break generational curses, okay. Part of breaking generational curses is being aware of what the patterns are, all right. So I'm gonna help us recognize a pattern. I think this is going to be a video that a lot of people, especially in certain demographics, can relate to. Okay, we're gonna recognize the patterns, recognize what's happening, be aware. You know what I mean? And then we're gonna go from there, right? So let me bring this type of pattern to some of you guys' attention. All right. So, if you want to go on my shorts, okay, earlier today, I had found a fish. I don't want to say I found a fish. What happened was I seen a falcon, and the falcon had just caught the fish itself. I was by a body of water, and the falcon had just caught the fish itself. And long story short, the falcon had dropped the fish off right in front of me. Okay, so that was just something kind of significant to me. You know what I mean? And I was already feeling pretty good. I was out on the bike ride, really nice day where I'm at. Um, you know what I mean? I was enjoying some time with my boys before I went out for the bike ride. Went out for the bike ride. You know, that happened. So, you know, I just feeling good. You know what I mean? High vibrations, right? And so I walked into the dwelling that I walked into. All right, and so I ran into a particular person, okay? Because it's never about the person. It's never to try to make anybody feel guilty and things like that. And that's what part of this video is going to be about. So it's never personal, but when you get a download, you get a transmission that can not only help yourself but other people and bring awareness to other people, then I gotta relay the message, okay? Because it's not about me and it's not about any other particular individual. It's about evolving and growing the collective, and in this particular case, breaking generational curses, okay? Patterns that have been going on for generations, possibly for a lot of you guys, and bringing awareness to it and helping you guys change it, okay? And do your part in changing it. So, I had brought the fish into the house, and I ran into someone that their energy wasn't so great. So let's just say it's never personal, right? This is an energetic battle, a vibrational battle. It's never personal, right? And so what you could say is the forces, all right, that oppose the frequency and the vibration that I was on at the time, you could say those forces attacked me through this person, okay? And so I didn't want to do with kind of with this person, the problem that this person has with my energy, and maybe like a whole lot of other people, all right? If you do have a problem with me and my energy, is part of it is, as you guys can see if you follow my channel and if you know me personally, if you observe me, that I'm a very individual person. Like, you know what I mean? I'm not like a whole lot of people. You know what I mean? And so what this person may have a problem with is I don't do things I don't do a lot of things conventionally, all right? And sometimes when you don't do a lot of things conventionally, you can make other people uncomfortable, because what I always talk about, how when you shift other people's paradigm and you start exposing them to things that they're not comfortable with being exposed to, then, you know, it can make them uncomfortable. And sometimes that can warrant attacks, okay? So, the person attacked me because I wouldn't do something the way that they suggested I should do it. And as soon as I had walked into the dwelling, I think I already said house. So as soon as I walked into the house, I didn't ask anybody any questions. I didn't ask for any suggestions or anything like that. And the person kind of proceeded with a certain tone I don't think I always tell you guys this, but it's not about what you say a lot of times, it's how you say it. So the person's tone and energy was all off anyway. Then they made a certain suggestion with a certain type of tone, and I was good on the suggestion. I didn't want to I had in mind what I was going to do with the fish and how I was going to prepare it and what I was going to do with it and things like that. I didn't really ask anybody, you know what I mean, for like, well, what should I do in this case or whatever. All right. So but anyway, and then a lot of times you can frustrate people by how you handle situations. If you don't respond to things the way that somebody expects you to respond, like if you don't fight fire with fire, or you know what I mean, or if you don't fight negativity with negativity, sometimes that can frustrate people if they're trying to manipulate you into that. That's kind of in relation to the video I just did a day or two ago. Right underneath this one, it's talking about how someone was disrespectful and how I handled the situation in a way that wasn't expected probably by a lot of people. And so with that said, the person got frustrated. What I did was I just stayed quiet. I didn't say anything. So that kind of threw the person off. I do that sometimes, you know what I mean, to kind of throw people off. If they say something or do something and they expect a clap back, you know what I mean, sometimes you can frustrate them even more than a clap back by clapping back with not clapping back, with just maybe ignoring them, maybe staying quiet, allowing them to just talk and hear themselves without you coming back at them and respond in a certain way. Sometimes that can do something to a person's soul that frustrates them even more. You know what I mean? So that's what I did. I stayed quiet. There was other people around, and I just allowed that person to, say whatever they needed to say without clapping back. And you can just feel the energy of how that threw them off. You know what I mean? And expose them. Sometimes you gotta let people expose themselves, and everything that you talk about that you may call out sometimes you gotta allow people to show themselves what you're talking about. And so therefore that's what I did. So the person kind of got frustrated and just kept talking, and so I made it aware to someone around me that I said, you see what I'm talking about. Now I haven't said anything back to this person. Why are they still talking? Why are they still on the attack? All right, it should just be over. You know what I mean? So I allowed that person to expose a lot of the things that I be talking about. All right. And so the person end up making an insult. Okay. And that leads me to this. A lot of you guys have grown up in situations and around people. Okay. Sometimes it doesn't have to necessarily be family or anything like that. It could just be people. Okay. Everything is not about family, immediate situations. You know what I mean? Sometimes it could just be people. Most of us have went to school. You know what I mean? Most of us have been out in our communities and stuff, and you have dealt with this stuff. So it's not always a personal family situation and things like that. So that's how I know a lot of people can relate to what I'm talking about and what I'm about to continue to share. A lot of you guys have been in situations and have grown up in situations that you probably aren't even consciously aware of how this pattern works and how this curse works, okay? This low vibrational pattern and frequency that doesn't allow us to be in our higher selves as individuals and as a collective, okay? And we didn't and I call these things generational curses, because many of you come from ancestry and things like that, where these type of things weren't normal, but we fell as a collective, okay? And certain patterns and certain ways of thinking and operating was implanted in us, and for generations now, you know, we didn't have the emotional, spiritual, and psychological intelligence to break ourselves out of that stuff. You know what I mean? To get back to when we were, you know, in our higher self, so to speak. Make sense? So, a lot of you guys have come up in situations where you felt like you couldn't make mistakes without being attacked, and you was scared to make mistakes. So a lot of times what I do with my children is when they do make mistakes, because everybody's going to make them, I try not to make them feel bad about it. I try to show them up my perspective, and show them a perspective. And because they're young, because they're not perfect, even when they become adults, they still not gonna be perfect. They still gonna make mistakes and things like that. And so I try to show them that you're gonna make mistakes. It's okay. How can we correct this though? You know what I mean? I say it in a certain tone, in a certain manner, okay? Because frequency and tone is very important. Like I said earlier in this video, to reiterate, it's not always what you say, but how you say it. So a lot of you guys, some of you guys are grown up in situations where people be talking to you all crazy and bad frequencies, bad tones, bad vibrations. So that's one thing. The way that they say it. And then a lot of you guys, what they say to you too isn't appropriate, okay? And isn't helpful. All right. So a lot of you guys have been in situations where you made mistakes and you had people, you know, talk to you crazy and try to make you feel really bad about making a mistake, as if they don't make mistakes. You know what I mean? And it made you feel like, psychologically, it makes you feel like you can't make mistakes. You know what I mean? And so, and it made you feel bad when you did make mistakes. Okay. And so, once again, you have to understand, and when you're what the newer generations have to understand, as we are correcting a lot of things, as these things are being brought to our attention and our awareness, that's a sign that we are part of the generation of change, okay, in a lot of good ways. And so when you're dealing with your children, and when you're dealing with other people, you know you don't like it when somebody try to make you feel bad about making a honest mistake. All right. And so you don't want to do that to other people, okay? And you don't want to implant that in people's subconscious mind and in their soul and in their spirit and their psychology. So now I didn't make any mistakes as far as the earlier story. That was just leading me in to this whole overall concept and idea of how, you know, how we should operate. You know what I mean? And something that needs to be corrected. So don't feel bad about mistakes, guys. And with your children and dealing with each other, don't try to make other people feel bad about mistakes. And then it's also a personality thing too. Some people, and it's also a structure thing, a hierarchy thing, you could say. You know what I mean? So a lot of times, many of you have grown up in situations too, where you were around people who, to establish themselves, they would try to make you feel bad for making mistakes and things like that. But if you notice, some of these same people, when they make their mistakes, they try not to make that big of a deal of it. Or you don't attack them like they would attack you for making a mistake. And generally this happens in relationships between parent and child because of the hierarchy. You know what I mean? So obviously, let's just say you're a 10-year-old child and you make a mistake. Some of you have had parents that will talk to you crazy. You know what I mean? And not talk to you like a child and not have a whole lot of patience, right? And so obviously when they make their mistakes as parents, right, you as a 10-year-old child, right, you're in no place in the hierarchy and in the relationship to be able to call their mistakes out a lot of times, right? And a lot of you wasn't liberated enough as children, because for generations, you know, we've been taught that adults can't do no wrong. You just a child, shut up, go in the corner somewhere, or just listen to what I'm telling you to do. And who are you to correct me type of a thing. And so that's another thing that we're changing with some of us, with the newer generations, is allowing your children to express themselves. Okay, not just looking at them like they just some object that don't know nothing, and you know everything, and you ain't trying to hear nothing they got to say when it comes to critiquing you. You know what I mean? And the corrections you may need to make as a parent, right? So I make sure when I'm parenting my children that I don't make those mistakes. I make sure I hear my children out. I hear their perspective. I listen to them. You know what I mean? I consider what they're saying, because even as an adult and as their parent, that doesn't mean that I don't make mistakes even towards them. All right? And so who better to hear, you know, what their grievances are, you know what I mean, towards me than from them. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean you have to agree with everything what the child say, but it's like, once again, it's about tone. It's about being willing to listen, humble yourself, you know what I mean, and listen. And even if you respond in a way that's disagreeable, meaning like you may disagree with what they're saying, then you calmly and in a certain tone, in a certain manner, and this helps you guys become more intellectual and more understanding and compassionate and more emotionally and psychologically intelligent. You know what I mean, and more articulate, not just yourself but also your children, because many of you have grown up in situations where that wasn't necessarily the case. You know what I mean? Some of you guys don't come from family trees in the past however many generations where education and intellectual capabilities and things like that was a strength or something that was very important in your upbringings. So that's why this is also important as well. You know what I mean? Helping with communication skills and how to communicate. Make sense? Because you as an adult are not perfect either, and you make a lot of mistakes in different ways, okay? So you have to humble yourself and understand that you make mistakes too. Mistakes are going to happen, and it is what it is. And the same way that you might try to brush your mistakes off, you should take that same tone with whoever else, because it could be what you may see as somebody else's mistake or potential mistake. You know what I mean? And have that same acceptance and like I said, tone. And so how this relates to the story I was saying earlier is because the person was trying to implant, insinuate, project, you know what I mean, that if I didn't want to do it their way, and if I didn't want to listen to their suggestion, that it wasn't gonna work out. And by the way, the fish tastes great. The way I made it, the way I did it, it tastes great. It might have not been the way that the person would have did it, but I chose to do it a certain way. I did it my way, and it turned out just fine. And I proved this particular person wrong a whole lot. You know what I mean? And so another great point in this video is the reason why so many people want to see some of you guys fall is because your rise, like I said, it shakes their paradigm. It proves them wrong. See, for example, the suggestions that person was making, because I didn't want to do something the way that they were suggesting I did, because I didn't want to do it the way that they suggested I should do it. Then they wanted to project that if I didn't do it this way, that this was gonna happen and it won't gonna turn out right, and things like that. You see what I mean? All because I didn't want to do it they way. And so that's a generational curse and pattern that many of you guys have experienced. That's something that this society experiences, okay? And that's a flaw in society and man's thinking and ways of operating. But see, this is complex stuff, right? This ain't no light talk. You see what I mean? This is very complex psychological, spiritual, and emotional things, right? So, and so the thing about it, time after time, I prove this person wrong a lot. And I don't throw it in their face and things like that, because I know that, you know, perhaps I will do something wrong sometimes and make mistakes sometimes. You see what I'm saying? And it ain't for someone else to try to throw it in your face and subconsciously feel good about it happening that way because you didn't do it the way they suggested. So to make them feel better about themselves and make them feel like they know everything and stuff like that, then you know, then they feel that makes them feel good and feel validated now. So sometimes a lot of you guys, people want to see you fall because you're not doing things conventionally and the way they would do it, and it makes them feel uncomfortable. And so even if it's just subconsciously, they want to see you fail a lot of times so it can prove them right. It's an ego thing. That makes sense? So I didn't do it their way. It turned out fine the way that I did it. But I think I just made a really good point right there. Okay? So that's another thing we gotta cut off and stop doing and bring awareness to, and then start working on it. All right? And so like I told my son, one of my sons, like I was like I always explained to him in some kind of way, like, you know, you don't have to do everything the way I would do it. You know what I mean? Sometimes you got to trust yourself. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. You regroup, you know what I mean? And then you get back on your path. I'm never going to try to make you feel like, see, you should have listened to what I said. You should have did it the way I told you to do it. And things like that, and try to make them feel bad, and to try to make plant doubt in them, and try to take away their confidence and stuff like that. You see what I mean? Those are the things that those things can potentially do if a person is not emotionally, spiritually, and psychologically intelligent and aware enough. You know what I mean? Those are the type of effects those things can have. And then most children aren't going to be, you know, that. So if you talking to your children like that, if you manipulating your children like that, then that's not good, right? You see what I mean? And those are the things that you can implant and instill in them. And that doesn't make a whole, confident person. You know what I mean? So that's very important to note, all right? So I guess I'll just leave it there. I think this was a really good video. A lot of my wisdom and my bills and my videos, I just like to, you know, make some, what I think is some good points and get you started and get you thinking. And then most people are intelligent enough that once you plant a certain seed, then you can take it from there with your own mind. You know what I mean? So hopefully I made some good sense in this video and brought some awareness, and this helps break another generational curse. Excuse me, my gum got in my way right there. But hopefully this helps break another generational curse, all right, by bringing awareness to it, being able to psychologically pick it apart. You know what I mean? Because that's what these forces depend on. They depend on your emotional, psychological and spiritual ignorance, and to not be able to intellectualize and to verbalize, you know what I mean, these types of things. Okay? So hopefully this was a good video, guys. Peace.